ban list talk, yay, we're talking about the TCG Forbidden Unlimited list that may or may not be happening some point in the next couple of weeks. I don't actually know. I find it very hard to predict what they're gonna do and when they're gonna do it, but I just realized this morning that we actually don't have many things that are gonna shake up the meta in the upcoming weeks, because we have no new sets, no side sets, nothing happening until Legacy of Destruction, which I think is April 25th. So for 1.5 months, we have nothing that changes the format. So we might as well have our ban list discussion now. And I think the initial thing, as you can tell, the first row is almost exclusively fire cards. We're going to talk about mainly fire cards. Whenever we have this discussion, it ends up being this sort of mishmash between a wish list and an actual prediction. On the one hand is what you want to happen. On the other hand is what you think will happen. And I think in terms of fire, the biggest question is, will they murder the deck because of how strong it is? Or will they try to make it weaker to try to level it with the other decks in the format, right? I personally think it's way more likely they won't completely murder it. I can completely understand when people are like, kill the fire deck because it's tier 0. I hate tier 0, you know, all that. However, I also think that like the deck just came out and is really, really expensive. And I don't think it'd be the smartest move of Konami to like kill a deck that just came out and people have spent a lot of money for. It doesn't seem like a great business model to me to just go ahead and like ban Snake Eye Ash or something like that, which leaves the question, how do you hit the fire deck without killing the fire deck but still making impactful changes? It's a very good question, actually. I've been thinking about it. I haven't reached like a real conclusion on it yet. Something like limiting Snake Eye Ash or something like that, it seems like a super weird hit, because we've talked about consistency hits before and I'm not the biggest fan of it, because putting something like Snake Eye Ash to 1, while it is possible, it doesn't really change what the deck can do. If they open the Snake Eye Ash or the Diabellstar or the Bonfire, you know, there's like dozens of ways to get to this card still. And if they do get to it, it's the same situation as before. So I don't know if I like limiting Snake Eye Ash. I wouldn't hate it either, because the deck is still going to be consistent enough with one Snake Eye Ash. But one thing it does do, if they don't hard open Snake Eye Ash, it makes them weaker to certain hand traps, right? Like Droll Lockbird hurts a lot more if you have to Bonfire for your Snake Eye Ash. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring hurts a lot more if you have to go for Diabellstar into Original Sinful Spoils, activate Original, and then you get Ash Blossomed. Also, if you have to go through the Diabellstar cards to find your Snake Eye Ash, you cannot use the Original Sinful Spoils to get to Jet Synchron or Ponix. Whenever they start with Diabellstar, it's actually a weaker combo than if they start with Snake Eye Ash. So I do think limiting Snake Eye Ash has its merits, and I think they could do it, and it wouldn't be a bad decision the more I think about it. And keep in mind, when we talk about these changes, I don't think I want all of them to happen at the same time. Just to sort my thoughts, I'm going to leave the Ash here for a moment. One other thing they could do is they could limit Poplar. Poplar is being played at multiple copies for a good reason. Every single list uses at least 2, if not 3. Limiting Poplar is okay, because if you draw the 1 Poplar, then you don't have it in the deck for Bonfire, you don't have it in the deck for Snake Eye Ash, so that would be all right. I am not a fan of banning Poplar at this point in time. It is one of the cards that I could see eventually being banned. The first ban list after its release, I think it's a little bit too soon. Also, one thing I don't like about limiting Poplar, if Poplar is at 1, you kind of create this weird situation where Poplar just kind of becomes a brick. You can still play with normal summon Poplar, but it's weird. I kind of am more in the camp of do not touch Poplar and touch other stuff. I think that would make more sense. Another thing that I think absolutely makes sense is limiting Flamberge Dragon. Flamberge Dragon is being played at 2 copies for a very good reason. Almost every combo that tries to play around Nibiru functions in a way that you use the Snake Eye Field spell to place a Flamberge and then summon it out in case you get Nibiru, but you then still need the second copy in your deck. So I think limiting Flamberge is a real possibility. Snake Eye Oak, I think I wouldn't touch. I've seen people talk about banning it, but I don't think they should. The same is true for Diabellstar. I've said they should maybe semi-limit or limit Wanted in the past. One of the things about the Diabellstar package I really like is that you can theoretically start your combos with any of the 3, right? It doesn't really matter if you draw Diabellstar, Wanted, or Original. They all kind of work. They can all get you there. But whenever my opponent draws draws Wanted, it's kind of frustrating because that card just for no reason does the exact same thing that Diabellstar does, but it draws a card later, which makes it just so much better than drawing Diabellstar immediately. It's a good card to like semi-limit or limit because of that. Hitting Wanted is not gonna kill Diabellstar as a card, like it's still very, very good. Just slightly adjust the amount of times that your opponent gets to draw a free card. I do not put cards on semi-limited very often in these discussions. For Wanted, I actually wouldn't mind it. I think it depends what else they want to do for the deck. I think if they limit Wanted, that'd be a pretty decent change because it puts the number of Diabellstars from 6 to 4. Original, I wouldn't touch. I think original is fine as it is. These changes right now that I made, 1 Ash, 1 Flamberge, 1 Wanted, I technically am not a big fan of these changes. I just want to say this. I feel like we're going in a direction here. It almost seems like a Master Duel ban list because we're doing consistency hits, except for the Flamberge. And I'm not typically a fan of consistency hits because you don't really change what the deck is capable of. You just change how consistently it does it. I think introducing an aspect of like inconsistency and bricking into the deck is not the right way to go about it. I don't like that. The problem is I'm struggling to find other ways to hit the deck that don't just murder it, right? Like banning Flamberge, banning Snake Eye Ash, banning Poplar. Those would be options that would completely change how the deck would play. That just feels a little bit too harsh for me this early on. Bonfire is a card that I personally am leaning towards not hitting. I think it would not be unreasonable if they did hit Bonfire. I feel like we're past the point where hitting the Rhoda is the right solution. Of course, Bonfire is specifically broken in Snake Eyes because of Poplar's effect, but I think at that point, I think Poplar is just the card that is too powerful. I do not like hitting Bonfire as much. Promethean Princess is a card that I think could eventually end up being banned. I don't think the time is now. The reason why I don't want Promethean Princess to be hit at this moment is I think it would be kind of sad. Promethean Princess is a phenomenal support card for so many fire decks. The problem is no one is paying attention to those fire decks because Snake Eye exists. And the same is maybe true for Bonfire, you know? I would like for Snake Eye to get weakened and then have the ability to have some other decks shine using cards like Bonfire or Promethean Princess. The thing is just currently, if you have the money to own Promethean Princess and Bonfire, you have no reason to play any of these other fire decks rather than just play Snake Eyes, right? And so I kind of want them to hit Snake Eye specifically other than Promethean and Bonfire because I would like to see what other decks can do with these cards. We're going to talk about some generic cards now, and I want to mention 2 cards specifically. If they ban Jet Synchron and they ban Apollousa, I think Snake Eyes pretty much loses the ability to play through Nibiru completely. Not completely, but almost entirely. Jet Synchron has been on the ban list before because of Halka Fibrax. I honestly think it's not unreasonable to think about doing it again because Jet Synchron enables so many things with the original Sinful Spells card. They are reprinting Apollousa in Rarity Collection too. That's why I'm putting it in maybe. I'm not putting it in banned. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm just discussing the format right now. And I honestly think, Rarity Collection aside, from a game design standpoint, I think we are in a point of the game where we need to talk about cards like Apollousa or Baron. Like, unironically, I'm a little bit tired of seeing Apollousa and Baron in every single end board because those cards are not just incredibly good end board pieces, they also help you play through hand traps. And I think that's super annoying. And I think they have always been kind of bannable, but right now they are in the biggest state of being bannable. Apollousa and Baron just making it so that every single combo deck out there just plays through Nibiru like it's nothing. It's super obnoxious to me. I understand Apollousa is in Rarity Collection too, but that is not good reasoning to me of saying like, yeah, Apollousa shouldn't be banned because they're printing it again. Yeah, maybe that means they won't do it, but that doesn't stop me from saying like they should. And right now would be a pretty good time. And I think this would in general be a huge step towards slowing the game down in general, because like combo decks losing the ability to play through Nibiru is huge. We don't even need to touch a single Manadium card if we ban Baron and Apollousa, because like Nibiru is going to regulate that deck very well. I think it's okay for extra deck monsters to be solid endboard pieces. That I'm completely fine with. What I do hate is when these cards are super powerful endboard pieces and protect your plays on the first turn. And I think that's ban-worthy behavior. As opposed to something like Linkuriboh, which I think is a very, very powerful card. However, I think if I compare Linkuriboh to other Link monsters in the format, other extra deck monsters in the format, I would rather have them ban those. SP Little Knight, I personally find probably the most fun extra deck monster at the moment. I think SP Little Knight is a phenomenal Yu-Gi-Oh card. I'm a big fan of it. I see some criticism in chat and I do agree. I'm not super happy with how this looks. I personally think it would be huge for the game if they banned Apo and Baron. I think that'd be great, but I don't think that'll happen, which leaves me with some Snake Eye hits. I'm really not happy with one Ash, one Wanted, one Flamberge. But I do think this is a situation, it just doesn't have a great solution. And this is a situation that they have maneuvered themselves into. This is completely their fault because no matter what they do, people are not going to be happy with it because of two things. The first thing is if they hit Snake Eye too hard, people that have invested into Snake Eye are going to be really pissed, which is understandable because the deck was unholy expensive. If they don't hit Snake Eye hard enough, people are going to be pissed as well because it's going to dominate. So they kind of have to find that sweet spot, and hitting that sweet spot is really, really hard, I think. I don't know. We're talking about this for too long. The problem in this situation, unironically, and I think the discussion shows that, they have maneuvered themselves into a situation. They've made this deck one card combo deck, 15 one-card starters, very hard to effectively hit without killing it because every card does the same thing, almost. Hitting one of these cards is really awkward. And then as well, the deck is $1,000, so if they hit it too hard, it's going to be really frustrating. If they don't hit it hard enough, it's going to be really frustrating. It's such a weird spot, man. So you know what? I'm going to leave it at that. You guys let me know in the YouTube comments what you think of the Snake Eye hits, or what they should do. And then I'm just going to leave the work to Konami, dude, because they've maneuvered themselves into this situation. You guys go solve it. Let's talk about other things that are way easier to solve. I thought about hitting other decks in the format. And then I thought to myself, you know what? Why would we hit Voiceless Voice at the moment? Why would we hit Labyrinth? Why would we hit whatever deck there is when at the moment everything just pales in comparison to Snake Eyes? I would find it very weird to talk about like, how do we hit Manadium right now? Whatever. Of course, there are decks that if they hit Snake Eyes, they're going to come back into the meta, but I think that's fine. Legitimately, the only thing I want is to remove some problematic individual cards from the format that we're going to talk about right now. And I felt like Branded was the only meta deck that was worth talking about for that. Honestly, I got no beef with Branded at the moment. I think they can keep their 3 Branded fusions. The only thing I want them to tackle on the ban list is the Gimmick Puppet problem. So I thought about just banning Gimmick Puppet, but then I realized you can still do a lot of other stuff with Sanctifier. Like you can do Edo, the Supreme Magical Force, or whatever it's called. You know, there's other stuff. I'd be happy with banning Sanctifier. Honestly, Branded is still a really good deck with this. A lot of the things that it does are still really, really powerful. Just hit the Sanctifier and call it a day. And I think even Branded players can't be unhappy with that. You have to admit that's a reasonable change. And literally every other deck in the game, they don't need to do shit about it. It's completely unreasonable at the moment to hit the other decks because like no one is really complaining about anything else in the game. I think if they solve Sanctifier and they solve Snake Eyes somehow, we're in a good place. Joel and Lockbird, I've kind of come to terms with Joel and Lockbird being in the format and sometimes being a necessary evil. If they don't want to, they don't have to touch Joel and Lockbird, in my opinion. Shifter is another story. I think Shifter is way too oppressive, and Shifter is single-handedly carrying decks at the moment to meta viability. The way I see it, Joel and Lockbird is only good if the deck is problematic itself. Like the deck that gets owned by Joel and Lockbird is probably the problem. The deck that gets owned by Shifter is just every Yu-Gi-Oh deck, which is not great. If I was in charge here, Shifter would be here since probably 2 years. Apparently, they don't want to do that. I'll take anywhere. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Put it to 1, put it to 2. I don't care. Just do something with it. The same is true for these guys. If they thought Rivalry goes in and there can be only 1, should be at 1, the same logic applies to these 3 cards. Especially Summon Limit and Anti-Spell have always been bannable. They've never been as bannable as now. We saw this exact thing happening. Gozen, Rivalry, Tikaboo went to 1 and people are going to the next best floodgates, which are Skill Drain, Anti-Spell, and Summon Limit. And in theory, there's more floodgates, but I think if we limit Skill Drain, Anti-Spell, and Summon Limit, I think the worst of the worst are done. I think if they do this one more thing, we finally might have an acceptable situation with floodgates in the game. They're not completely gone. You can still play 1 of each, and if you play a bunch of them, you still have a decent amount. You just can't play like 3 of each of the best ones. And I think if they did it to Gozen, Rivalry, and Tikaboo, there's no reason why they shouldn't be doing it to specifically Skill Drain, Anti-Spell, and Summon Limit. And unironically, this is all I want. I want Snake Eye hits, I want the Gimmick Puppet problem solved, and I want Floodgate hits. Why not ban them? If I was in charge, I would ban them. I'm trying to find the middle ground because apparently Konami doesn't want to ban these cards, which is something that I can live with. I just don't want them to be at 3. I think if these 3 things happen, perfect. I don't need any more. If other decks come back into the format and are problematic, we can deal with them later. But right now, all of these changes I think are meta relevant at the moment. So all of these things are realistic and are called for. These things should happen. Everything else can stay the way it is. And all that's left is talk about some things that they should bring back. And the most important thing to me personally that they should bring back is Sharvara. I think the fact that they limited Sharvara in hindsight is criminal. At the time when they limited Sharvara, to me it felt reasonable. It was before Fire format. Unchained was arguably the best and most successful deck in the format. So when they did it, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Now looking back at it, it was so harsh, man. Unchained right now with 3 Sharvara wouldn't even be that good. I hope they realized that this was too much and they reverse it as soon as possible. Like, that shouldn't have happened. Engage is something that I would like to see go back to 3. I had a lot of fun with Sky Striker engine at the last regional. I don't think pure Sky Striker would be a problem. I think Engage could go back to 3. Spam your copy pastas now. Have them ready. And then this other stuff, honestly, this is kind of like a placeholder because I noticed that we keep repeating these things every single time a ban list is near. There's a lot of stuff on the ban list that can just come off. Trident obviously can come back. It's in Master Duel and doesn't do much. These 3 here are all cards that have come off of the ban list in some capacity previously. You know, Harp went to 1. Pankratops went to 2. Redox came back from banned to 1. None of these cards did anything. If anything, some people cited Pankratops, but it was completely fine. All of these guys can come back to 3, and Redox is also a placeholder for all the Dragon Rulers. And if you still think to this day that Dragon Rulers cannot come back to 3 after all of them are at 3 in Master Duel now and haven't done anything, like it's legitimately unplayable, it's not even like rogue, it's like unplayable shit, just declutter this ban list a little bit. Why is Talents not on this list? Because we have had a talk about Talents in previous ban list discussions, and I think right now Talents is not as bannable as it was in the past. I personally think I would be pretty happy with a list like this. You know, like I said, tackle Snake Eye, tackle Floodgates, tackle Sanctifier, bring back some unnecessary stuff on the ban list, and I think we're good. The one thing that I'm not happy with, and I want to emphasize that again, I don't know exactly how I would hit the fire deck. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know what the perfect way to hit the fire deck is. I think the situation is very hard to solve, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, I hope you found it interesting. Let me know what you thought. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and all the good stuff. Appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye, YouTube.